G'day everybody, it's everyone's favourite handsome Australian here, Frosty Mate, here to talk to you about the BTD6 Heroes tier list that we've got up on our screen. We've just finished up with a month-long speedrun here, and with patch 31 just coming out, I thought this would be a great time to explore all the different heroes and all the changes that they've gone through here and give you a ranking based on where I think they stand on the meta. By the way, you should check that out at frostymeta.twitchtv.com.au. They've been asking me, Frosty, which hero should I be purchasing now as such, and so I thought we'd kill two birds with one stone here and make a tier list based on which heroes you think you should be purchasing here. So we've got 5 categories here today. We've got must, simply because Quincy is a very cheap hero, is very applicable in a lot of different game modes, is very good in half cash, even used in some chimps clears. And, even though, as we all know, Quincy's bow does in fact miss literally everything, he's still got some really useful abilities. His level 10 does trivialize a lot of hard rounds here in level 63 for a wave there, 76 and 78, and something like that always has a good amount of value in a game, as well as Quincy having a good secondary role as being a great Moab killer later on in the game. I think Quincy is a very easy value for money here. Okay, next up we've got Gwen here, and Gwen I'm gonna have to rank probably in questionable spending here. If we apply the same logic here, of course, as we all know, the first 4 heroes here are quite literally free, but in the sake of trying to rank everyone's power here, I think that for the most part, putting Gwen in questionable spending is about right. Gwen is a little bit expensive for her cost after all, simply because, trying to pay out something like 970 early on in a chimps game here can be a bit of a limiting factor, as well as the fact that Gwen's buff, while it is completely map wide, later on in the game, it does start to fall off quite a bit and is very limited with the strategies that it can go for. We have seen it had a little bit of success on quad with things like the tack shooter embrittlement strategy, but other than that, Gwen is still a little bit underwhelming. So for the time being, questionable spending is about right. I don't think that there's many other places where Gwen is really used outside of chimps, and unfortunately I think she gets a little bit outclassed by other things. So questionable spending seems about right. Okay, so next up here we've got Striker Jones, and if we apply the same logic again, Striker Jones, definitely value for money up in here. So next up here we've got Striker Jones, and if we apply the same logic again, Striker Jones, definitely value for money up in here. Striker's just one of those really simple heroes, great support hero, has got a really useful level 3. Level 10's not so great, getting the artillery command, not exactly terribly useful for most meta strategies right about now, but still just the ability to buff up bomb shooters. As we all know, Moab Maulers are an incredible strategy here, and if you spam them out with Striker Jones, they're only going to get stronger here. And there are plenty of maps in where Striker is viable, for example Spillway with mortar strategies as well, and I think you'll find that most often than not, if a map has enough space, you can make Moab Mauler strategies pay off for you there. So definitely a good value for money hero here. Alright, last but not least, Oben here. So Oben's a really interesting one, I think. I definitely think Oben is value for money, but I'm struggling to find where exactly I think Oben should be placed here if we're going to rank these 3 in terms of strength. I think that Oben is perhaps, alright, you know what, I'm going to put Oben over Striker Jones here. Simply because Oben has an amazing half cash, and I do mean amazing. Wall of Trees is one of the best abilities in the game, and the fact that with the latest patches it's been able to be targetable now means that it takes away a lot of Oben's early game RNG, if you don't include Brambles, because as we all know, Brambles is still RNG there. So I think Oben has got a lot of different maps that Oben is viable on, makes Workshop a heck of a lot easier as well if you want to use him on Workshop because of the projectiles that go through everything. And Oben being able to be a great support hero at the same time, viable not only with druids but magic monkeys as well. I think really the only thing that makes me dislike Oben is probably the brambles there, and the fact that past the mid game, trees really start to fall off. So even though they're a great safety mechanism, Oben's not really doing a ton to carry the team here. So I think the top of value for money is probably around the right spot for Oben. Okay, with everything said and done here, let's move on from all the free heroes. Let's delete this tier. We already know what's happening here. Alright, Sai. So, Sai recently received some nerfs because Sai was just so overpowered, right? Sai was one of the best late game heroes in the entire game, but not only that, Sai's early game was absolutely insane. Being able to be a sniper that grabbed pretty much anything means that Sai in patch 30 must buy. Now, patch 31, Sai received a really big nerf. Sai got that $200 bonus added onto Sai's cost, putting up into the 1,000, one of the most expensive heroes in the game. So, where does Sai stack up now? Let's have a look-see here. Oh, wait. Still in the must-buy territory here. Sai is still a really, really strong hero. The only thing that really gets changed is Sai's ability to clear off some of those expert chimps maps where you could get them down at around say round 14, 15 for Ravine and be able to try to base your strategy around that. Now it's going to get changed up a little bit. It's not going to be so easy. You're going to have to find a little bit more of a save up for that early game there. But even still, I think Sai, without a doubt, one of the best heroes in the game. I think the thing that's a big bonus for Sai is that Sai isn't just gated towards chimps maps. Sai is still really good on maps like Half Cash, especially for something like Muddy Puddles, Bloody Puddles, you name it. And really other game modes because of Sai's ability to grab pretty much every single balloon type at a reasonable amount of time there. So Sai, still one of the best heroes in the game. Might be a little bit difficult for newer players to understand how to use their abilities, getting the stun, getting the massive psionic scream there. It can be a little bit testing, but with proper usage here, Sai is one of the highest skill testing heroes in the game, and still one of the best to this day, so definitely up in the must-buy tier here. Alright, Churchill. So, Churchill is, how do I say this? Churchill's gone through a little bit of a ranking flux for me. I used to rank Churchill up in the must-buy territory, and unfortunately for Churchill, as I started to go through that month-long speedrun and try to use him a little bit, Churchill started to claw himself from the top of value for money all the way down to the bottom here. I don't think Churchill is a questionable spending tier right about now, but I do think Churchill is probably down there. Unfortunately, Churchill, being so expensive, does really put a bit of a hamper on their ability to try to carry the game. But Churchill, for that mid-game power spike there, still pretty dang strong. It's going to get you through those early 40 or so rounds relatively easily and be able to provide a lot of support for the team as long as you've got some decent backup alongside of him. Really relies on those straight lines though. You don't want to be playing Churchill on a map with too many curves or anything like that. Something like, I don't know, what's a stream bed? I don't know, why can't I think of a map with too many curves on it right about now? Not the point. The point is that Churchill does have really strong mob clear, does output a ton of damage, but doesn't really do a ton of anything else. And it kind of feels like a lot of heroes already feel that niche. It already feels like Sai, on top of having insane utility, already deals out a ton of damage there as well, albeit not too much of an area of effect without their abilities. So I think Churchill, about bottom of value for money here, is about right. You're not going to be purchasing Churchill on too many other different game modes outside of something like maybe chimps or anything else, because it just feels like other heroes just probably do that job a little bit better, and you're able to get other towers alongside of that as well. So I think Churchill being about bottom of value for money here, pretty solid spot. Alright, I'm going to come out and say it now. I think we all know who the best hero in the game is, and it's Benjamin. It's Benjamin, and it's relatively close at the moment, I would say, but Benjamin is, for those who don't understand, by far one of the strongest heroes in the entire game. Doesn't even matter if you discount chimps, because Benjamin, for every single other game mode in the entire game, is just absolutely insane. So, let's break it down for all of those who don't understand, and in some very succinct points. Okay. So, starting with a few points here. Number 1, Benjamin's level 7, his Trojan, and makes level 40 Moab clear trivial. You know, it's a little bit RNG whether it works or not, but it's still one of the best things that you can possibly ask for in the entire game. Those ceramics can be very hard to deal with for a good few different heroes here, or different setups. And so, being able to just clear out everything out of there is absolutely nutty. Number 2, Ben's got the second best passive ability in the game, in which Ben earns you a ton of money. So, Ben, not only on top of having really good extra utility, is also getting you extra cash every single round here. Number 3 as well, Ben also has one of the best abilities in the entire game in terms of Siphon. So if you have any knowledge of which rounds are coming up or not, Ben essentially makes an entire round of 76 completely trivialized. An entire round of, say, round 60 or 80 that you may be having a problem with, essentially irrelevant. So, Ben has just got so much insane utility there that it's just so good. And this applies to, as I said before, this applies to everything in the game, right? Like, outside of chimps, which Ben is probably still usable, but not that great. Ben just makes so much of the game so much easier, and just makes it so that you're able to do what you need to do that much freer. So, Ben, in my eyes, best hero in the game here. Feel free to dispute that. Come at me, bro. Alright, so going from one of the best heroes in the game here, we've got Ezili here. And I don't think it's any surprise Ezili, while is definitely a very strong hero in chimps maps here, struggles to find a little bit of a niche even in chimps maps, because Ezili is one of those selfish heroes, and we don't really have a lot of selfish heroes in the game right about now. You know, heroes that rely solely on building around them. And Ezili is really good in the fact that Ezili's level 20, her Moab Hex, is able to one-shot the BAD on chimps, right? That's insane. Being able to do that is, you know, something that makes one of the hardest points in the game completely trivialized. However, Ezili does not have a lot of utility going through pretty much every single other part of the game until Ezili starts to get up into those later levels there. And, you know, I would love to say that Ezili finds a place outside of chimps there, you know, on like alternate balloons routes, but in reality, you're just handicapping yourself more often than not by not playing a different hero such as, you know, Souta, Sai, Benjamin, Quincy, Oben, you know, Gwendolyn, Churchill, Ben, Etienne, Haraldo. There's just so many better things that you can be doing so much more frequently that, to me, I love Ezili, but Ezili just finds herself down in the questionable spending right about now. Because even though Ezili does have a few, you know, faults where she falls a bit short, Ezili definitely has a few good strengths there as well, in specifically killing Moabs. So, Mr. Fusty is up next here. Now, Mr. Fusty is a bit of an interesting one here. Mr. Fusty did receive a little bit of a nerf. Did make the footprint size just that little bit larger here. So, Papasti is definitely still one of the stronger heroes in the game right about now. But, where would we place Mr. Fusty? I definitely think Mr. Fusty is in the value for money tier here. But, is Pat better than Churchill? Yeah, probably. Is Pat better than Quincy? Yeah, probably. Is Pat better than Striker Jones, though? Maybe. I think Pat is around this point right here. I'm going to put Pat... I mean, my Mola's strats are just so good with Striker Jones that it's hard to put Pat up any further. again, Pat is one of those really strong late game heroes where Pat has a ton of utility later on, but Pat sucks early game, right? Pat just doesn't have a good early game, and there's no two ways about it. Melee hero, short range, doesn't really do a whole bunch of damage here. Pat is pretty much reliant on getting that rallying roar down sooner rather than later, because without that, Pat just doesn't really have a bunch going on there. So when it comes to late game strategies, for things like Ouch, for things like, I don't know, Flooded Valley, Pat's insane. Pat being able to, buff up your attack shooters there, your Grandmaster Ninjas, absolutely makes those rounds a lot easier. But at the same time, I don't think Pat has what it takes to be able to be up in the must-buy territory quite yet. Okay, so all the casual fans probably gonna shout vehemently against me here, but Adora actually belongs up in questionable spending up here. Unfortunately, not up in the must-buy or the value for money territory, but I will place Adora higher than both Gwendolyn and Ezili here for the time being, because, funnily enough, I don't think Adora is actually as useless as Adora is one of those selfish heroes that we have in the game, and relying heavily on buffs, relying on that blood sacrifice to get her up to that overpowered level 20 state that she can get into. But there's also another usage of Adora here that you might not realize, is that with the buff that Adora received to buffing up Sun Temples, Adora actually has an insane tier 5 boss kill with the Sun Temples strategy there, where you're just able to constantly spam them all out. So Adora actually has a good bit of usage, not only in some niche chimps maps like Workshop, but also in boss battles as well. So while I don't think Adora is better than any of these other heroes up top here, Adora definitely has a niche here, so we'll rate it down in the questionable spending territory. Alright, so next up we've got Brickle here, and of course, being Brickle, I have to make the completely unfunny and original joke of, no water on your map, easy regrettable purchases here. But no, in reality, Brickle is pretty darn stellar. I think Brickle is actually better than not only Striker Jones, not only Oben, but is actually in the must-buy tier. Because Brickle, even with the level 7 buff that she recently got, where she's able to do, excellent damage to pretty much everything from this point on, has an insane level 3 with Naval Tactics, has an insane level 10. The Mega Mine is absolutely devastating in later rounds there if you know how to use it properly. It's just that Brickle is overall a really, really strong hero there. So more often than not, if you're able to find yourself on a water map here, Brickle, while being the obvious choice, is more often than not gonna be the best choice for you as well. So definitely would recommend, if you haven't already, buy a Brickle. It's one of the best heroes in the game. Ooh, now, this one might seem a little bit controversial, but I don't like Etienne that much. No, not this much. I'm gonna say about about this much. Alright, so you might be saying, alright, Frosty, look, Etienne has an amazing level 8. He gives camo to everybody. The UCAP is so good, dude. It's so overpowered. But, I mean, have you seen Etienne's early game, dude? Etienne's early game is hot garbage, mate. Trying to get this fella to work on chimps maps or anything like that is just a nightmare half the time, because if one of your UFOs or one of your drones decides to go wherever, and it screws up your peers, well, that's just a restart there more often than not. So I think Etienne is a great free play hero, great co-op hero and things like that, and definitely has a lot of power in the mid game as well. UCAV is definitely very strong. It does make a lot of those rounds like 78, 76, even 75 a little bit easier there, and also makes the 80s quite that bit easier because Etienne is a fast leveling hero. But late game, it's definitely not the best hero, even though it definitely adds a lot of power to the build. Everything that you have to go for it does make it that little bit more awkward. So I think Etienne, actually quite a decently strong hero, but not like S++ tier like a lot of people rate him. So I think we'll just put him down to the value for money tier for the time being here. Look, Isab, eat your heart out, fella. I'm gonna put Souta down in the... Oh, wait, no, sorry. Wait, what? What's that? Isab, you're handing me $100 bill? Well, I guess I have to put Souta right up here in the must-buy territory. And I don't think it's a surprise to anybody who has played this game for a decent amount of time here. Souta is by far one of the strongest heroes in the game. It makes it so that early game maps are just trivialized for a lot of players because Souta pops pretty much every single type of blue. Getting Souta down early means that you don't have to worry about any rounds up until round 28 where there's lead. And even with that, you can still ability on through it there. And, you know, even though Souta's late game isn't necessarily the best, the amount of save up that you get from Souta there is just simply insane. So, not only that, but Souta is just good on every single game mode. It's so incredibly strong, you know, has an ability that clears off most rush waves, you know, the 63s, and I bring them up a lot because they just are that important, you know, being able to get through those rounds without having to invest a ton more money. So, not only that, but has an insanely strong early game, really strong mid game with a lot of Moab damage, and late game has a little bit of utility here or there, though not the greatest, but I think that it's pretty clear Souta just belongs up in the must-buy tier. The only reason why I rate it behind Benjamin is that Benjamin is just so powerful and is so good at pretty much every stage of the game that, I mean, there is just a clear power level gap in between the two of them here. So, definitely, if I were to recommend to newer players here, I would put it like this in terms of purchasing, you know, in terms of order purchasing, but in terms of power level, I think this is about where it stands for the time being. Now, with patch 31 just released here, we have a new hero named Haraldo. Now, unfortunately, this tier list doesn't quite have Haraldo on there, but I'd like to let you to use your imagination here for just a quick little second, and imagine a world where there is a gap in between Benjamin and Souta here. Right in between there, that's right, Haraldo is silly busted right about now. I think Haraldo is just so incredibly good at pretty much every single game mode, besides maybe Half Cash and Apocalypse, that Haraldo is just by far... It is almost too good not to purchase, you know. I think the only thing that Haraldo struggles with a little bit more than Ben is that Ben is just overall, again, just so powerful. I can't understate that at all. But not only that, Ben has better boss battle clear than Haraldo does. Now, Haraldo, I feel, is definitely irreplaceable in co-op games, but in solo, I'd say that Benjamin definitely has a little bit of an advantage there. I've seen runs that have gone an extra 2 million over Haraldo there simply because Ben just farms up that much more in the early game here and it snowballs into an earlier lead. So I think Haraldo, overall, one of the best heroes in the entire game, has an answer to pretty much everything, trivializes some of the hardest chimps map in the entire game there. I think Haraldo is just that strong. So anyway, there you have it. That's my BTD6 Heroes tier list. If you enjoyed it, feel free to leave a like, hit that subscribe button down below there, leave a comment telling me your opinions on these heroes here and whether you agree with them or not. I probably won't read 99% of them there, but you can feel free to shout into the void there just to let me know that your voice is being heard. Anyways, thank you all so much for tuning in. I will see you all next time. Take care.